Hello everyone. A very warm welcome to Aitareya Institute and our daily current affairs session. I am Aditya Singh, and as we have already discussed this, current affairs are not just about knowing what happened, they're about understanding why it happened, how it impacts India and the world, and what UPSC can ask from it. Most specifically, the idea is to understand from what all regions and how UPSC asks what it asks. So in every session, we'll decode the day's most important developments with complete prelims facts, mains analysis, and also answer writing perspectives, which we have been doing so far. So let's get started with today's discussion. So first, very important news article, which is Mission Agaman. Okay, so this is the news Mission Agaman Vikram 1. So what is the news article all about? First and foremost thing, that mission Agaman is the maiden first orbital launch mission. Okay, so it's an orbital launch mission of Vikram 1. What is Vikram 1? India's first privately developed orbital class rocket. So it's a privately developed orbital class rocket, and this rocket has for the first time launched, है ना, launched your mission Agaman. Okay. Now, what you also need to remember about Vikram 1 is it is developed by Skyroot Aerospace, and this is authorized by InSpace. Okay, so these are some of the things that you. It's not that private organizations won't be asked. If those private entities are mentioned in your PIB news, which it has been, so then there are chances that a question could be asked even on private entities, just like what happened with a question was asked on Microsoft. Okay, 2 years back, a question on in prelims on Microsoft was asked. Why? Because something happened for the first time in the world. Secondly, it was mentioned in PIB, which makes it all the more relevant from the point of view of your examination. So InSpace, it is authorized by InSpace. I hope you must be well aware about InSpace. What is InSpace? Please pause the video and do mention it in the comment section. What is InSpace? Okay. So I'm telling you now, InSpace, what's the full form of it? It is Indian National Space Promotion. Indian National Space Promotion and Authorization Center. So as the name suggests, it authorizes. So what is InSpace? First of all, what is InSpace? So it is an autonomous nodal agency. It is an autonomous nodal agency under which ministry or which department? Under Department of Space. Okay. So this you have to remember that it is under Department of Space. Now this is functioning as a single window clearance. So all the decisions with regards to the clearances goes through InSpace. So it provides you a single window. Why is this idea of single window clearance very important? Because this is what promotes your easy functioning. Easy functioning provides you ease of doing business by the private sector. So if you want to involve the private sector in the space sector, then you would require setups and mechanisms like the single window clearance. And in this aspect, InSpace is the agency, it is the nodal agency which is functioning as a single window clearance and authorization mechanism for whom? For all the private sector, for the for all the private sector space activities. So please do remember a bit about what it is and what is InSpace. So coming back to the discussion, so this mission Agaman represents the first attempt. This is why this becomes extremely pertinent from the point of view of your exam. It represents the first attempt by an Indian private company to place multiple customer payloads into low Earth orbit, which is roughly around at 450 kilometer altitude. So this is the first thing that you have to remember. Second thing is that it is where exactly is it placed. So it is placed at low Earth orbit. So let's say if an examiner wants to confuse you, so it will give the same statement, but it will write, instead of, let's say, what will examiner write? It will say that represents the first attempt by Indian private company to place multiple customer payloads into, rather than writing low Earth orbit, it will write, let's say, medium Earth orbit, or let's say high Earth orbit, or geostationary orbit. Okay, geostationary orbit or geosynchronous orbit. Okay, it will mention something like this. So please keep a note of this, that it was placed in low Earth orbit. So launch window between 12th of July to 4th of August. It will be doing so. Payload capacity is 350 kgs. It will be placed into low Earth orbit. So this is the third thing. You don't need to remember the exact kgs. If at all you are giving state civil services exam, then a question could be asked on the exact data with regards to the amount of payload that it is carrying. But generally in UPSC, even if it is asked, you don't need to remember. In UPSC prelim, you don't need to remember the exact precise kgs. Rather, a rough estimates would be fine. 350, 300, 400, that would be fine. Because if at all UPSC prelims, a question is framed on this payload capacity, then instead of 350 kgs, they would write something like 3500 kgs. Okay. So the difference would be huge. So even if you have read it thoroughly and you have a fair bit of idea, then you can easily eliminate such kind of things. Okay. So coming back to the discussion, payloads carried. What are the payloads carried? One is the scope payload by Skyroot, Solaris S3, Graha Space, and D-Cubed, a technology demonstrator, and Embrace robotic debris capture payload. Okay, so even a debris capture payload is being launched. This is by Cosmoserve Space. Now, debris capturing has become very important, particularly with the amounts of debris in the space. Now, this debris in the space, this is rising exponentially. This is rising exponentially, and there is a pertinent threat that in the upcoming future it might cover the entire globe and it will impact the functioning. Okay, so this is the payloads carried. Symbolic payloads includes cosmic bloom artwork and 18-karat gold micro rocket, microscopic sculptures of C.V. Raman, Vikram Sarabhai, APJ Abdul Kalam. Those are symbolic payloads. It's highly unlikely a question would be asked on symbolic payloads, but the actual payloads carried, that could be asked. Okay, so just read about this, not go without going much into detail about this. Advanced materials are used. So it is built using an all carbon composite structure. All carbon composite structure combining of solid fuel boosters. Okay. So the boosters are solid fuel with 3D printed liquid rocket engine. So are you able to visualize this? That the rocket engine is 3D printed. First thing. So if a question on 3D printing comes in mains, then if you write this argument, if you write this point in your answer, that will fetch you an extra mark. Okay. Apart from 3D printed liquid, it is liquid rocket engine. This you have to remember. Okay. So it is not cryogenic, it is not solid, it is liquid rocket engine. Why liquid rocket? For reduced weight and high performance. Okay, generally you would be thinking that it might be solid rocket engine, but no, it is liquid rocket engine. So this is, I'm also mentioning you exactly where all, how the examiner can confuse you. So you have to go into the mind of the examiner. Then only you will be able to safely solve the prelims exam. And trust me, and I have qualified enough number of prelims to let you know this is the way the examiner's mind functions. Okay, I hope this is absolutely clear. So talking about the aims of mission Agaman. Okay, So it validates India's first indigenous private orbital launch capability. We have discussed this. It's a historic milestone for India's space spectrum. This is why this news becomes very important. So it demonstrates the commercial viability of the private launch services under the Indian Space Policy 2023 and in space led liberalization. So now I'm sure you must have read about the LPG reforms. Okay. LPG reforms. I'm sure you must have read about LPG reforms in economics when after which we started liberalizing, privatizing, and started moving towards globalization. Then in economics, if you have not read it, please do read it. Very, very important reforms, LPG reforms. Like a lot of reforms happened in construction sector, your telecom sector. Uh, it witnessed a massive reforms, particularly after LPG. A lot of private sector started coming, but still, the space sector was not allowed for privatization, or let's say the involvement of the private sector. But now we have a dedicated agency which is in space. So this is leading the liberalization in the space sector of India. Okay. So under which policy? Indian space policy. So Indian space policy it was approved by the Union Cabinet in 2023, and it fundamentally transitions the India's space sector from ISRO-centric model to an open, demand-driven commercial ecosystem. So the idea behind this is all the previous models are based on ISRO centricity. Okay, so this is what we need to change. From ISRO-centric model, we are transitioning towards an open. We are transitioning towards a demand-driven, okay, demand-driven commercial commercial ecosystem. So all in all, what I'm trying to say is we are promoting and encouraging the role of private sector in the space industry. So you will have various NGEs. Have you heard about NGEs, non-governmental entities, to undertake this end-to-end space activities, including various activities like you will be spacecraft, manufacturing spacecraft, establishing launch pads, not only spacecraft but even launch pads. Okay, so launch pads, you will be working upon operating the satellites and providing commercial space transportation. Okay, so in the future, India will also be focusing on commercial space transportation. This is a new sector. This is a new subsector which is opening in your transportation sector, space transportation. So not just spacecraft launch, not just manufacturing spacecraft, but also creating launch pads like you have in Sriharikota. Okay, working upon operating satellites and also, working upon commercial space transportation. Okay, so all this is focused upon in the Indian space policy of 2023. So now the aim of Agaman is to provide cost-effective, reliable, and indigenous launch platform for which satellites, small satellites, for both your domestic as well as international customers. So this is the entire agenda behind your mission Agaman. Okay, that it should be cost effective, it should be reliable, and the platform should be indigenously built. Whenever you see a term indigenous in news, and especially for these kind of aspects, please make a note of it separately. So it marks India's emergence as a competitive player in the global commercial small satellite launch market. Okay, the focus is not on big, huge satellite, but small satellites and making it affordable. Okay, making it cost effective. Now, this mission not only highlights the success of Skyroute, but also highlights the success of in-space reforms. The in-space led liberalization is demonstrated through it. in genuinely. So the idea is to open up the space sector to the private participation and innovation. Now this is very important. Private sector innovation. So this is one area where we have been constantly lagging behind, innovation, and particularly space sector innovation. So this is where in space comes in. Okay. Now this strengthens India's position in global new space economy. Alongside, you have major players. I'm sure you must have read them or at least heard about them. Your SpaceX, you have your Rocket Lab, and other commercial space launch providers. And SpaceX, have you heard of it? Elon Musk. Okay, the famous SpaceX. So Mission Agaman supports missions across communication, Earth observation, you have your navigation, scientific research, and even technology demonstration. We just saw an example of this. Okay, so I hope this article is absolutely clear. Moving forward, next is your Mansabal, Manasbal Lake. Manasbal Lake. So this Manasbal Lake is often referred as supreme gem of all Kashmir lakes. Okay, it is India's deepest natural freshwater lake. Okay, so this is the first point that you have to remember, that it is the deepest natural freshwater lake in India, Manasbal Lake, reaching up to a depth of 43 feet and spanning a huge area. Okay, so where is the location? Safapura area in Gandarbal district. So you don't have to remember this. You just need to memorize that it is associated with Jammu and Kashmir, approximately 30 kilometers north of Srinagar. Now, this is encircled by 4 villages. So these villages are mentioned. You don't need to remember the names. And now, by the way, Jammu and Kashmir is associated not only with the deepest natural freshwater lake, but also associated with the largest freshwater lake in India. And also the same lake is second largest in Asia. So which is the largest freshwater lake in India? And that is none other than your Wular Lake. Okay, very, very, very important. Also remember this. Okay, so Wular Lake. It's located in Bandipora district of Jammu and Kashmir. You just need to remember Jammu and Kashmir. And this another major thing that you have to keep in mind is that it is fed directly by which river? Jhelum River. It is fed directly by the Jhelum River. So this tectonic lake acts as a vital natural flood reservoir. Okay. So also you have to remember that this is a tectonic lake. Okay, this is a tectonic lake and it acts as a vital natural flood reservoir. So whenever floods happen, a huge amount of water goes to this lake. So it kinds of acts like a sponge. It takes away most of the water of the flood. Moreover, if you have seen it, if you have seen any videos, then you will be realizing that the Wular Lake also supports the regional fishery sector. Okay, and moreover, a last point that you have to remember is that it has been a Ramsar site since long. Actually, it is in 1990. You can cross check, but it is since 1990 that Wular Lake is a Ramsar site. So all these points you have to remember about Wular Lake, that it is fed by Jhelum River. It is a tectonic lake and it has been a Ramsar site since 1990. You don't need to remember the year. I'm just telling you to provide you a context. Okay. So similarly, uh, Wular is the largest freshwater lake, whereas Manasbal Lake is the deepest freshwater lake, both in Jammu and Kashmir. Okay. So if we talk about the topography is flanked by Baladar Mountains in the east and elevated Karewa Plateaus in the north and limestone-rich Atung Hills. Atung Hills is in south. So all these mountains and hills, you don't actually need to remember this, except of course if you have the geography optional. Okay, you can remember this. Karewa Plateau. Why? Because Kashmir is associated with Karewa soils. Karewa soils of Kashmir are very famous. This has been often asked in your civil services exam, Karewa soils. And these are famous for saffron cultivation. This is famous for your saffron cultivation. And the saffron cultivation in the regional language, it is known as zafran. Okay, so you just need to remember Karewa soils and what is it famous for. Okay, so if we talk about geological classification, it's a high altitude valley lake with the 1585 to 1600-meter altitudinal belt of the Jhelum River basin. Okay, I've already, so this is another fact that you have to remember, and formed during the third major Himalayan glaciation period. So in this is the third point that you have to remember. Hydrology, if we talk about, this is unique in relying primarily on over 1200 underground natural springs rather than surface glacial rivers. A structural east-west geological fissures runs across the bed. Okay, so this is the kind of unique geology that it has. And since it is talking about springs, a question I'll be putting it to you. What is the famous origin of Jhelum River? Okay, pause the video and do mention it in the comment section. So it is Very Nag Spring. It is Very Nag Spring. Okay, moving ahead. Key features. What are the key features? Okay, so one is lotus bloom canopy, and you must go and see this at least on Google if you're not visiting that region. Lotus bloom canopy. Now this is famous for dense lotus flowers. You don't need to remember this. Nelumbo nucifera. It gardens blooming across crystal clear waters every July and August. So it is not that it is blooming throughout the year, but only on specific months. Moreover, you have a Mughal heritage. And by the way, Manasbal Lake, both the Manasbal as well as Bular Lake are associated with Jhelum River. Okay, coming back to the discussion, Mughal heritage. Now this is overlooked by ruins of Jharokha Bagh. Jharokha Bagh, it's a 17th century fort and terrace garden built by Empress Noor Jahan. Okay, so now my question is, Noor Jahan was the wife of which Mughal ruler? You have to mention it in the comment section. I'm sure you must be very good in history. Okay, so this is the Mughal heritage. Now coming back to natural spawning ground. So this Manasbal Lake supports resident and even migratory birds. Migratory birds like your mallards, you have your horned grebes, you have your golden eagles and wide-headed ducks. Okay, so try to look at few of them. Very beautiful, especially if you have keen interest in bird watching. Okay. So next is recent. What is the recent recovery and significance? Why has this been in news? Okay. So following large scale de-weeding and channel dredging has happened. Okay. So in order to, you know, reinvigorate, replenish or bring back the lake to its original condition, all the weeds over it has been removed. So first foremost thing is large scale de-weeding has been undertaken. And next is channel dredging. So since it's a lake, a lot of silt gets deposited at the bottom. If the silt gets deposited at the bottom, one second, if the silt gets deposited at the bottom, then this, the amount of water that it has, है this this will start, because I'm sure you must have heard about the crow story that kept on putting stones and finally the water came from bottom towards top. So if you witness high amount of silting at the bottom of the channel, then the water will eventually come out of it. And this time this will not be beneficial for the crow, because this time this is not about crows. This is about the people which are living in the vicinity, the people which are living in the floodplains. Now they will be witnessing flood-like scenario. First thing, floods intensity will increase. Second is even the area that will be witnessing floods, that will also increase. So that is why you have to remove this, they have to remove this sediments which are settled at the bottom. You have to remove this sludge. So this removing the process of removing this is referred as channel dredging. Generally, this term is associated with ports. So ports also are associated with this, with the deposition of silt. Ports, you have also you'll also be reading about this dredging operation, which are associated with the dams, because a huge amount of silt gets deposited underneath beside the dams. Your hydroelectric power potential that reduces if you have high amount of silting. Moreover, the capacity of the dam reduces. So you are witnessing channel dredging over this 70,000 square feet lake is showing clear signs of ecological recovery. As soon as you started removing the weeds, as soon as you started dredging the channel, you started witnessing ecological recovery. And now, how are you witnessing this? Various migratory birds have started returning to Manasbal Lake. Okay, various birds, like your mallards, horned grebes, your golden eagles, your white-headed, they all are now returning towards Manasbal Lake. So this provides income through fishing. Fishing economy is quite prominent over here. And lotus roots, very, very famous. Lotus roots, which is known as nadru. Okay, so you'll be witnessing nadru cultivation, which is contributing to local food security in Kashmir. So, okay, so nadru is very, very famous. If you ever visit Kashmir, please try to, you know, have certain dishes around nadru. Okay, so important wintering habitat along the Central Asian flyway. Now, this is very important. So, so in all of this, you can remember this about Lotus Nadru, and second is that it is a part of Central Asian Flyway. I'll give you a suggestion. Even if, let's say, almost the entire India is a part of almost the entire India is a part of Central Asian Flyway. So if, let's say, a question arises that is this lake in India a part of Central Asian Flyway, mark it as correct. Okay, so you have to trust me on this, and you'll be only able to trust me on this if you go and have a look of the path of the Central Asian Flyway. Then only you'll be able to trust me that almost the entire of India is covered. So if at all a question arises, then you can safely mark that yes, this lake is a part of Central Asian Flyway. So this supports your wetland conservation and biodiversity protection. So recovery underscores the importance of community driven ecological restoration. So you can even use this as a case study. You can use this as a case study while writing and analyzing your answers, while writing your mains answers, because this is a community driven restoration initiative for the Himalayan freshwater bodies. And this is what, as whenever you are posted as a district magistrate, you will be encouraging all this community driven ecological research. This is what that you will be striving for. This is what you must do, because without the involvement of communities, you cannot expect to restore any ecosystem in a sustainable way. And this is why, why is this? Because if the communities are involved, then they will feel a sense of ownership. They will feel a sense of ownership, and then they will be able to protect and conserve those ecosystems much better, because they are feeling that this ecosystem is my own. Then I will conserve it much better. Otherwise, so this is why in the forests, I'm sure you must have heard about joint forest management. So similarly, community driven ecological restoration should be undertaken in almost all of the environmental conservation measures. Okay, so I hope the points I have mentioned, please try to remember them. Moving forward, next is a very famous news, FIFA World Cup 2026. So this was the 23rd edition. So why this becomes very important? Because now, as you have observed this year and even in years before, 2023, 2026, a lot many questions on in 2023 and 2024 also. A lot many questions have been regularly asked on sports, which was earlier not the case. So you need to know a bit about sports as well. So it was the 23rd edition of the quadrennial men's football tournament. Now, who is the winner? Spain as the world champion. And who have they actually defeated? That can also be asked. That is Argentina. Okay, so this is their second title overall after defeating Argentina 1-0 in the extra time. Okay, if you are a football fan, I'm sure you must have watched this match. So 106th minute, that won't be us, obviously, but by 1-0 in extra time. So who were the host nation? It was co-hosted by 16 cities in three North American nations. So what are the three North American nations? That is US, Canada, and Mexico, making it the first World Cup jointly hosted by three countries. So this is why this is a point which can very easily be asked in your state exams, or it could be asked even in your UPSC prelims. So it was first 48 team expansion, expanded from 32 to 48 teams, featuring 104 total matches across 12 groups of 4. A historical structural change through the tournament format. So entire format has been changed. Historical milestone for the Mexico. It became the first country to host World Cup matches in three separate editions. So this is also another historical milestone. Final venue was MetLife Stadium. It is in New Jersey. Okay, this featured the first ever halftime show in a World Cup final, setting record global attendance figures. Okay, so what all things that you have to keep a focus on? One is the edition, who were the champions, who were the runner-ups, and second thing is that this was the first World Cup which was jointly hosted by three countries. And third thing, this is the structural changes that has happened. And third thing is that Mexico became the first country in the entire world. This is hard to imagine, but this is the fact. This is the first country to host World Cup matches in three separate editions: 1970, 86, and 2026. The year won't be asked, obviously, but you have to remember these 3 points. Okay, moving on. So, some of the awards you can remember. One is the Golden Ball. Okay, that was given to Rodri. He's from Spain. Golden Boot, who was the top scorer here? Kylian Mbappe. He's from France. Golden Glove has been given to Unai Simon. He's also from Spain. Best Young Players is also from Spain, Pau Cubarsí, and Fair Play Award goes to Netherlands. So at least these 3 points you have to remember. Very important. Spain's defensive dominance and significance. Spain conceded just one goal in 8 matches. Okay, so this proves their defense is very, very strong. One of the strongest defensive campaigns in the entire World Cup history. This this ended the Lionel Messi's bid for the back-to-back titles and what may be his final World Cup appearance. So that is quite sentimental for the fans of Lionel Messi. Okay, just like I am. So 2026 edition introduced structural changes to the tournament, expanding the global football representation. So this is an important thing, that the representation has significantly improved, expanded. Still, unfortunately, India was unable to make through it. Now it set global television viewership, obviously, and stadium attendance highest ever, reinforcing the football status as the world's most watched sport. Okay, you don't need to remember all of this, just basic fact, but you have to remember these points. Who got the golden ball, golden boot, and the golden glove. Okay, moving on. Next is your Lestes paloti. Lestes paloti. So it is a newly described species of a spread-wing damselfly. So this is the picture. You can remember this Lestes peloti through this picture. Now this belongs to family Lestidae, order Odonata, discovered by odontologist in the Western Ghats of Kerala. So all such kind of species which are observed or discovered those become very important. So how is it named? It is named in honor of Dr. Muhammad Jafar Palot. He was a scientist at Zoological Survey of India, Kozhikode. So distribution, if we talk about, it is distributed in 6 Kerala districts. You don't need to remember them. Just remember it's from Kerala. Habitat. So unlike most of the damselfly, it inhabits the scrub vegetation around the homesteads and the laterite hillocks. Okay. So Kerala, also when you will be studying Kerala, the soils of Kerala, then you will be realizing that it is also famous for laterite soil. Laterite soil, and how is the laterite soil formed? Through the process of leaching. Do mention in the comment section what is the process of leaching. How is it different from capillary action? Okay, so laterite hillocks often far from invisible open water bodies. So one unique thing about this Lestes paloti is that the color of it changes seasonally. Okay, so it is brown during the dry season but transitions to bluish coloration during the monsoon. So it's also kind of an indicator of monsoon, a unique biological adaptation that it has undergone. So resolves the historical error. Earlier historical records of Lestes nodalis in southern India were misidentifications. They actually pertain to Lestes paloti, and this is why this becomes very important. So all in all, what you have to remember is that first of all, it's a spread-wing damselfly, Lestes paloti, observed in Kerala. So this is the second thing. Okay, and what is the habitat, which is scrub vegetation, and fourth is this unique factor that it undergoes a seasonal color shift. It has bluish coloration during the monsoon, and this is why it becomes important. Okay. So what is the significance? It's a biodiversity milestone because it's a species discovered in the Western Ghats in 97 years, revealing the significant hidden insect diversity in one of the words biodiversity. I'm sure you must be well aware of that fact that Western Ghat is one of the biodiversity hotspots of India. Okay. The definition of the biodiversity hotspot has been asked in UPSC Prelims. It could be again asked. So please do revise that. Okay. What is the statistical? What is the number of indigenous plant species that it requires? What is the amount of degradation that ecosystem has to undergo in order for it to be categorized as a biodiversity hotspot? So all in all those points has been asked in your UPSC prelims. Okay. So it's a biodiversity. Also, please remember what are the other biodiversity hotspots? Like the Himalayas are also another biodiversity hotspots. You have your Sunda land. Okay. So please remember this. Remember the other biodiversity hotspots which are associated with India. Please do mention them in the comment section. Okay. This is how you will be practicing. Try to engage with the discussion. So it raises the Kerala's odonate. You know what is odonate? Your dragonfly and damselfly count to 192 species. You don't need to remember the number as such. You just need to understand what is odonate. It refers to dragonfly as well as damselfly. Okay. Taxonomical significance confirmed as distinct species through detailed microscopic examination. How? Male anal appendages and secondary genitalia. Now that distinguishes it from the northeastern lookalikes. So it has a cryptic behavior. What is cryptic? It has hidden behavior. Hidden behavior and visual similarities to certain related species which we have just mentioned about. Okay. Conservation call. As Lestes paloti inhabits the laterite hillocks and scrublands near the human settlements, its discovery highlights the urgent need. It highlights the urgent need to protect the non-forest freshwater ecosystems and the peri-urban habitats. What is peri-urban habitats? So let's say this is the area of influence of a city A. Okay. So the vicinity region around the city is the peri-urban region. Okay, this is the peri-urban region. What is the peri-urban region? So it has the economical influence of the city, but it is outside the administrative limits of the city. Okay, so what is it? Economical influence of the city prevails over here, but you administrative, it is outside the administrative limits. Okay, that is not inside the peri-urban areas. Okay, so this is why this becomes even more crucial as to how will you conserve this species, because that is beyond the administrative limits, and this all the peri-urban areas, and those are generally zones of unsustainable development. Those are zones of unsustainable development. There is chaos. The development is not at all scientific. Okay, because that is not controlled by the uh, administration of the city. Rather, it is under the administrative influence of a rural region, but that is not capable enough to manage such peri-urban areas. And this is why we witness a lot of encroachments into the wetlands in the peri-urban areas. The high amount of environmental and ecological degradation happens in the peri-urban areas. And this is why we need to conserve the habitats in such peri-urban areas. So this is in mains, you can use this as an example. So, and I try to include such points in your mains. So, underscores the importance of continued taxonomical research in Western Ghats biodiversity hotspot. So, I've already told you what exactly points you need to remember. First is you have to remember the biodiversity hotspot, and what is the definition of biodiversity hotspot, and what all biodiversity hotspot are associated with India. Second thing, for mains you can remember this, and third thing, and only these 2 points. Rest of the thing you can just go and have a read about this. Okay, so I hope you liked today's discussion. If you have any doubts regarding it, and we have discussed each and every topic in great depth. Okay, only the most important topics we have picked up and discussed it in great depth, and the depth is such, and we have constantly told you which point exactly is pertinent from the point of view of prelims, which point you can use it as a value addition in mains. Okay, so keep on revising. Okay, and if you have any doubt, please do mention it in the comment section. Okay, thank you.